Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tosh Talks. I am Tosh Berman. I am the book buyer at Book Soup. It's a bookstore on Sunset Boulevard, 8818 Sunset Boulevard. And we specialize in, I hope you're sitting down when you hear this, but we specialize in books. That's why we're called Book Soup. It was planned that way from the very beginning, and I'm the book buyer at Book Soup. I want to talk about a very, very obscure art literary movement that took place in London in 1914, just right before World War I broke out. The Vortex. These gentlemen, these ladies and gentlemen, they're an art group that started actually really around 1913, heavily influenced by the Italian Futurists. And the main person of the group, there's actually two main gentlemen in the group. One is Wyndham Lewis, who is a writer, a painter, and essayist, and a sort of organizer. The other guy is Ezra Pound, who I think most of you know. He is one of the great American poets, but at this time he was living in London. Pound was one of those great guys who was in the right place, right time, except during World War II, where he became a prisoner of war due to his pro-fascist Italy broadcasting he made for Mussolini. You're not perfect all the time, but when he was great, he was really great. And first of all, let's talk about Blast. Blast is a publication that Lewis and Pound put out, again, like in 1913, 1914. Very much influenced by the Futurists, but Lewis wanted to do something more English-centric, something more British, and this is sort of like a British take on the Italian Futurists. Now, in case you don't know who the Futurists are, I may be just jumping the gun here. The Futurists were a group of artists and writers and painters and poets and filmmakers and photographers in Italy, who probably the first modernist ism in 20th century art. And the Futurists believed in industry, believed in machinery, believed in the car. You know, in many ways, they want to force art in the visual world into the modern age. And they also was crazy about a thing called war. They like war. They thought war was a way of cleaning the system out. It's sort of like you have to bleed sometimes to get rid of the germs or get rid of the other diseases. And in their point of view, war was a way of doing this. And of course, saying this, they obviously had a very romantic viewpoint of what war is. And when the World War I broke out, they became soldiers. Whether they became happy soldiers after the fact, that's another story. I don't think so. But nonetheless, the Futurists were incredible. They did really amazing artwork. And again, they were totally focused on speed. They were really into like motion speed. And they see the 20th century as being a thing of speed and movement. And also one of their philosophies was to take Venice, which is, of course, this beautiful city, this beautiful town of sorts, and they want to pour concrete over it because they felt like they need to make Venice into a modern city. They didn't like the antique version of Venice, which still stands, or barely stands. But anyway, Wyndham Lewis and Ezra Pound were, in a sense, fans of the main guy, Marinetti, of the Futurists. Marinetti was the main figurehead. But they wanted to separate it from the Futurists and focus this totally on a British thing. And so they put a journal together called Blast. And Wyndham Lewis did all the design work for this book, and it's kind of interesting. You look at the typography; it's all like sort of like this type of stuff. I'm just going to focus certain pages because what's here is actually poems and manifestos, but it's not enough. It's also the design work. Is that this is equally important as what the book says when you read the text. You have to sort of see the text the way it's laid out and read it on a page. And this is like actually the start of the manifesto. You can see how the typography is laid out. And again, it was done in 1914. So very much influenced by the Futurists, but actually in a strange way a little bit more conservative. if I can say that. Because the futurists had like writing like going up, down, this way, this way. But here it's very much readable and it's very clear, but very sort of graphically dynamic. And I'm just going to read you a little, like one of the manifestos. Because it strikes me, I'm just going to read you little excerpts, because it strikes me being very British, and I find that really fascinating. It's like different chapters. This is like chapter 1. Bless England for its ships, which switch back on blue, green, and red seas all around the pink earth ball. Big bets on each. Bless all seafarers. They exchange not one land for another, but one element for another, the more against the less abstract. Bless the vast planetary abstraction of the ocean. So these guys had like a bigger scope or a bigger scale of things of sorts. But even that, and I think the totally British thing, but in their manifesto, they have like a pro-hairdressing moment. Right here. And I'm going to read this a little bit because I find this fascinating. Part 2. Bless the hairdresser. He attacks Mother Nature for a small fee. Hourly he plows heads for 6p, scores chins and lips for 3p. He makes systematic mercenary war on this wildness. He trims aimless and retrograde growth into clean, arch shapes and angular plots. Now, how many art movements can you think of who wrote a manifesto? I mean, they break the big issues like war, life, liberty, but the British here wrote about it. They're a hairdresser. Now, if that's not a revolutionary thing to do, and one of the great 20th century art movements to focus on the hairdresser, the importance of the hairdresser, this is a movement that I can join up in without a doubt. So, and they're not just totally focused like, well, you know, bless English humor. Look at the pro-English humor, that's kind of great. But to show they're not like totally like this, like the Italians are totally pretty much into Italy, the beauty of Italian stuff. But the Vorticists also like France, and they have one called Bless France. So it's kind of nice that they focus outside of England. You know, it's kind of hairdresser. If you're going to bless the hairdresser and bless France, I'm there with them. You know. And they said, like, bless France, home of manners, the best, the worst, and interesting mixtures. Masterly pornography, great enemy of progress. Combativeness, great human spectacs, depths of elegance, female qualities, females, ballads of its prehistoric Apache. If that is not the essence of France, I don't know what is. And so again, this is actually the size of this of Blast is very much what it looked like. The size of this book. Only 2 issues came out. Like all great art movements, lasted a very short time, maybe like a year or 2 years, and then it's gone. Ezra Pound went on doing what he did, and Wyndham Lewis wrote novels, and actually to this day, he's more of a cult figure than anything else. Brian Ferry of Roxy Music collects his paintings, which I think is kind of interesting. So you get Ezra Pound poetry in here. So there's a lot of poetry. So it's poetry, short stories, fiction, put together by the Vorticists, Wyndham Lewis, and again it came out in 1914. Very, very controversial when it came out in England at that time. And then we got the Vorticists, which is this is like the art. This is actually a show that's taking place now in Italy. It's going to the Tate Museum in London, and then it's going to, where's it going afterwards? It's going somewhere in the United States, I believe. Yeah, it's going to the National Museum of Art at Duke University in North Carolina. And this looks like it's going to be a fantastic show. But here's a little extra. So like Blast is the cover of the book, which works on. Here's some of the artwork. It's very decorative. I mean, it's not like it's very, it appeals to the eye. It's not like it's not like crazy, insane, like conceptual. It's very graphic orientated. And that's one thing about the Vorticists. They're very, very design orientated to me. Here's some like book covers they did. You can't see it. I know. If you have HD high definition YouTube whatever. I mean, you can see this. But, and this is like Wyndham Lewis's artwork itself, like his portraits. And this one, the portrait, it's kind of neat. And, yeah, there's something here I want to show you. Here's some more of the sort of the abstractions they did at the time. This is all like 1913, 1914. And this is all by Wyndham Lewis, a man of many talents. There's something I want to show you. Yeah, here's some of the photography. Here's the portrait of Ezra Pound, taken like 1913, 1914. I mean, it looks very sort of Dadaist, sort of futurist, mostly like futurist, because of the movement type of situation and the blurriness. And the photographer is Alvin Langdon Coburn, a British photographer. And generally, that's what I want to say. It's kind of interesting. The futurists, in their own way, are very positive. And this is like Rule One is like the real division point between the art movements. The futurists are were very positive. I feel like the Vortex people were very positive too before the war. When the war hit, it changed everything. Worlds were destroyed. After World War I, what came out of the ashes of that in art is the Dada group. What's interesting about Dada is that they're totally negative. They're anti-war, but anti-everything. It's like negative. And they find strength being in a sort of this negative point of view, or this negative frame of mind. Where before World War I, the arts were looking forward to the future. Like the futurists were really, really into the automobile, into architecture, building a new society, sort of this, this pre-fascist sort of ideal that this almost a utopian thing that everything's going to work out just because of technology. And then after the war, in the same parts of the world, the Dadists said, no, that didn't work out. Nothing works out. War is bad. Humans are bad. Everything's kind of bad. It's sort of this negative connotation. And out of that negative connotation, in a way, surrealism came out of that and sort of changed neither bad or good. But what's interesting about the Dada thing is truly more like a punk rock thing of its time, where it was totally against everything. But the Vortexes were against conservative culture, and as well as the futurists, a class thing. They were against all that. But they were very optimistic towards the future at the time. But then again, as I mentioned, World War I totally changed everything, changed the format. And after World War I settled down, Dada came up, which sort of exposed all the rot and everything that's sort of terrible in the world. And that is my my little lecture about the early 20th century European art movements. But I think there's only like, this is it. There's like only 2 books on this group, and we have it at BookSoup. Which means we're experts, I guess, of the Vortex, and both are essential. Both are important books. You should check it out. And if you go through the show, which I would love to, I don't think I can. I'm sure it's a great exhibit, really fascinating. And that is another, I hope to you, exciting episode of Tosh Talks. Bye bye.